Hello, Mo. How are you?
Bishop Coffey, great to see you. Of course, I've known you for 25 years since we were these ensigns in the chaplain candidate program, and you haven't aged. You need to bottle whatever you're doing or whatever skincare product line you use or
Uh,
whatever workout routine you got, and you need to sell that because that's amazing. Good to
it's
see
just good living, brother.
you. No
Well,
replacement for clean
I
living.
must I must compliment you on that manly beard of yours. I did not see that when you were an ensign in the Navy. That would have
No,
been a
I
big
mean, I had
no-no.
it. I was just constantly taking it off. The day came, I didn't have to rub my face raw trying to shave this beast. I was so glad to be done with that. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. So
Well, I think that people might like to know how, we got to know each other as Navy ensigns in the Navy chaplain candidate program. And I'm sure they'd like to know about your career, not so much mine, and then what you're doing now with Crossing the Divide, which is you're helping veterans. So that's a wonderful thing that you're doing, and and it really is good to see you again, my old friend. It's been a long time, and you look great.
well, thank you so much. So first of all, thank you and thank Sebastian for having us on, for having me on. I thought you'd like to know. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I think your listeners or viewers would like to know is that before he was Bishop Joe Coffey, when he was chaplain candidate Joe to me, this guy was he had this remarkable combination of being a PT guru, an absolute beast, but one of the kindest, genuinely kindest people you'd ever meet. And I have a feeling neither one of those things has changed. Just a
Oh, Mo,
remarkably well balanced
thank
individual.
you very much. But this show's about you, my brother.
Well, thank you. You and I met in 1993, the summer of 93. We were at the Navy's chaplain candidate program together. At that time, it was, I believe it was 2 months long. We had about,
56 days,
okay.
and I loved
Wow.
every day of it.
Good memory.
Yeah.
And we were there with about 75 or so, maybe a couple more other chaplain candidates trying to figure out if we were right for the Navy's chaplain program, Navy Marine Corps chaplain program. And we had a great time. I mean, to be two single guys in San Diego with, in the summer, there's just so much to do. And whether it was hitting the beach, and I know you're still paddle boarding and whatnot, but whether it was paddle boarding on the beach or surfing or going those days, even on our off days, we would go run for miles and and work out hard and eat good food, and it was a good
Yeah.
time. I really enjoyed it. I wish our careers had crossed paths more than they did after that, but it was always so genuinely enjoyable to link up with you in the years that followed, whether it was at chaplain school in Newport or uh,
Yeah.
our careers took us different places. So
It really was a unique program for the Navy to take a look at us. We could take a look at the Navy, and it was for people of all different faith groups, men, women,
mhm.
Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, Muslim, and we were all there to see about becoming Navy chaplains together, learning about the chaplain corps.
Yeah.
And I think both of us just took to it from day one,
Hmm.
and it was really enjoyable. So I'm glad it worked out for both of us. We both had full careers in the Navy. And
We did.
so I feel blessed. I know you do also that we got that opportunity to be chaplain candidates together for that really incredible summer in San Diego. It's not a bad place to have it be in the summertime when you're on
Yeah,
duty.
well, yeah. But then to step fully into a ministry where we had the opportunity to not just reflect Christ, but to essentially be his hands and his feet, his mouthpiece, his ears, to warfighters, to sailors and Marines. And I don't know if you ever ended up doing any joint billets with soldiers or airmen, but coasties. But to be able to eat the same dirt they eat, to live there, it's very,
Yeah,
we often refer to that as incarnational ministry, and you
yeah,
did it so well. You were the opposite of somebody who feels sort of entitled or privileged stepping into
yeah.
that role. I mean, you lived their life with them, and folks, regardless of where when I talk to people, where they've met you, it's always with this heart of deep affection, and that's the kind of ministry that we ought to bring to people, even now out of uniform, whether we're still serving veteran warfighters and their families, or somebody in the parish or on the street. We need to constantly see people with the eyes of Jesus and be those hands
Yeah.
and feet.
Yeah, we really did get to learn about what was expected of us as chaplains, that we would minister to our own, we would care for others, and we would provide for others and facilitate for others. So we were always learning how we could best have people practice their faith, whatever that faith might be. And I know that it really is, it's great institutional ministry, but it wasn't for everybody. It's not for everybody, but if you feel called to that by the Lord, it's a really great way to serve the Lord and our country in uniform. So we learned how to march, we learned how to wear the uniform, how to salute, who to salute, when not to salute. We learned all those things. We had gunnery sergeants yelling at us and making us do push-ups. And I think we really embraced it, because if you're not mentally into it, it's just not fun. But I think for us, it was fun, because we got to serve the Lord, but also learn about life as an officer, wearing a cross and the ensign bar, the butter bar. So it was such great, and seeing friends that we knew back then, it's really fun, because you just we have so many memories of that summer together, of training. And we trained hard. We were in fantastic shape, and we just loved it. I think we loved every day of it, and we got paid.
Almost every, my goodness. I remember the first day out of chaplains at chaplain candidate school, they sent me and another chaplain candidate to 1st Marine Division, to a battalion that was at the last stage of training for what they call a MU, Marine Expeditionary Unit deployment, right? And you know this, but your listeners, viewers may not. And we've kind of gotten back to that training. For a couple decades, we kind of got away from it, and we were doing a lot more training for land warfare, typical kind of land campaign. And now we've gotten back to traditional MU training. Well, the third hike that they typically do is somewhere around 20 plus miles. I show up the first day. What I did not know is that's the point that they were at in their training. And I have no, it was actually the XO. The executive officer of the battalion came up to me and he says, "You ever been on a hump, chaplain?" And I go, "A what?" I didn't know what that was. I'm like, he goes, "Go to the SUPO, the supply officer, and tell him you're going on the hump with us tomorrow." I'm like, okay. So I show up. I go to the SUPO and I'm like, "Hey, I'm going on the hump with you guys tomorrow." He goes, "Really?" I'm thinking, like, what does that mean? I'm like, yeah. So he starts throwing, and back then we were still using Alice packs and 782 gear. 1993. He starts throwing all this gear at me, and I really got a keen idea of what I was in for the next morning. And I'll just, without giving you the long story, I'll say that I don't know what it was, 22, 25 miles later, up Recon Hill behind Camp Horno and out to the beach and back, and seeing about 8 Marines drop from heat stroke. I had a much better idea what a hump was, and I could not, it would kill me today, Joe. Would absolutely.
Well, I can remember on my first assignment with the Combat Assault Battalion, Okinawa. It was great. I was the battalion chaplain, so there were 900 Marines and one chaplain, me, and we went out on a hump, and I think it was about 10 miles maybe, but the rain was coming down so hard it was coming sideways, and we were absolutely torrentially soaked. And I remember thinking to myself, the second I don't want to be here, I'm in trouble. And I thought, no, I want to be here. I'm their chaplain. And so that gave me my motivation I wanted to motivate my troops, because that's so important. If 95% of it's mental, if you're not mentally strong, then everything else is magnified. It becomes a disaster, like how you're feeling or how your feet feel or how your legs are tired or sore. Everything hurts. But if you're mentally strong, you can do just about anything. I think that's what we tried to portray to our sailors and our Marines and Coasties, that mental toughness, which I think we learned as chaplain candidates and in chaplain school. So I know you and I both tried to share that with our troops.
That's a great incarnational ministry right there. If Jesus, if the God of the universe could deign to come down to earth and suffer what he suffered, I can certainly, sweat and bleed, whether it's literally or metaphorically with the guys that I'm there to serve. Well, I say the guys because when you were not back then, in the mid '90s, Marine infantry units were still all male, so
Yeah.
no disrespect intended. But the
Yeah.
men and women that were called to serve, you're absolutely right. Like on your worst days, you're like, why am I here? Am I here
Yeah.
for a paycheck, or am I here
Yeah.
to stroke my ego, or am I here to serve these people powerfully, who America's sons and daughters that I get a chance to come alongside of and encourage and draw them into a deeper relationship with God, but get them through this tough season in their life. And it's when it becomes less about me and more about the other person, it provides some energy and motivation for sure.
Yeah, so Mo, I know we're going to talk a little bit about Cross the Divide, what you're doing now, but I think the viewers and listeners would really like to know a little bit about your career as a Navy chaplain, some of your billets, some of your highlights, what you learned, what you enjoyed about that, and how it affected your family, how that was a big part of your career was you had your family with you.
I did, yeah. So thank you for asking, and I will try to stay focused on this trip down memory lane in a way that hopefully is helpful to folks listening. But after you and I met, I went back into the reserves. I actually got married in '96, so a few years later, to my bride.
That was my ordination year, so it was a big year for both of us.
Oh yeah, that was huge. So to my bride, Rhonda, who we celebrate 29 years this September. So that was huge, but realized for me going onto active duty at that moment, it was not. I was planning on it, but wasn't the best choice. I wanted to pour into my marriage, so I ended up pastoring for 4 years while being in the reserves with the Marine Corps as a Navy chaplain. So for those of your viewers or listeners who don't know, Navy chaplains serve not just the Navy but the Marine Corps and the Coast Guard as well. So in case that's confusing, hopefully that makes sense. And then in 2000, I came on active duty, and I was asked to stand up or help stand up a chaplain's retreat and seminar ministry we call Credo in the Navy, CREDO, which, as you and many of your viewers may know, it stands for I believe in Latin, and that's intentional. And this retreat and seminar ministry was started in the Northeast. Well, we were in Connecticut, and just a few hours down the highway, 9/11 happens, and suddenly the world changes, and it changed I mean, it's still not different. You go to the airport today, and for those of us that remember what it was like before 9/11, the world has never really gone back, right?
Yeah.
One of the things that we did there I kind of had this vision of, I'll share this story with you really quickly. We all remember where we were when 9/11 happened. My wife and I, on September 10th, we were driving up to Prince Edward Island in Canada for our anniversary. And as we're driving up, I literally turn, and you got to know, Joe, I'm not a touchy-feely kind of guy. You may know that. I mean, uh, and I don't usually say stuff like this, but I just turned to her and I said, I just have the weirdest sense that we're going to get all the way up to Prince Edward Island and something really bad is going to happen back home.
Wow.
And I remember that like it was yesterday. And I don't know why. I didn't know why. But we got up there, got settled into our cabin. I got up the next morning, and as I'm just kind of walking the grounds, the Canadian host that we had comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, horrible thing that happened to the Americans, eh?" And I looked at him and I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about, because we didn't have a TV in there. We didn't have smartphones at the time. So he brings me in, and at that time, it was just before the second plane hit the second tower, or the second plane hit the Twin Towers. And uh, I was like, whoa. And instantly I started, I think through God's intervention, started imagining when I get back, how can I step into this and add value and serve people powerfully? That turned into a 5-day retreat that we would do for people we were not prepared for the demand signal that 9/11 would create in all of our our first responders and the caretakers. And so we created this retreat where we get them away to this beautiful location in the University of Rhode Island had in the woods, a place that Dwight Eisenhower used to vacation on a pond. It was absolutely gorgeous. Get them out in God's creation and just walk through some of the stuff that they were experiencing. Because as you can imagine, that's just a very traumatic thing to be working 7 days a week, most of them sleeping in their offices because, again, the demand signal to respond to what had just happened was so intense. And that really, in some ways, became a seminal season of life for what we're doing now with Cross the Divide, where we take people out on retreats, hunting trips, backpacking trips, women's retreats, horse camping, llama packing, all these things. But getting them out in God's creation and helping them detach from some of the distractions and the busyness of life to really just kind of listen to that still small voice. But that was the first 3 years on active duty. From there, I went to a ship overseas, served at Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center, 29 Palms, at the base, and then later with 2-7, 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines, 1st Tanks, and then 7th Marine Regiment. From there, I went to the USS Nimitz, which is a carrier. I believe they're going to be, it's sad, but they're going to be retiring her after this next deployment. It's the oldest ship in that class, Nimitz class carrier. But that was a wonderful deployment. The team that I was with, the department heads that I interacted with most regularly, and all the sailors who just, we crunched, like a lot of carriers do, a 6-month deployment into 9.5 months or 10 months. Those deployments can last long. And they just, those young men and women that served from reactor down below to the flight deck, they were so professional and they worked so hard 7 days a week for an extremely long period of time. I was so impressed by them. And our CEO, Captain Ruth at the time, now Admiral Ruth, was amazing. Came back, ended up here in where we live now in Western Washington, and did a couple successive tours with the Navy again, but on shore duty. And then as I started to think about retirement and thinking about what God had been working in my life for 5 decades, it just seemed really clear that continuing that incarnational ministry of walking with people, literally journeying with people in their lives, and doing that in an outdoor setting, which was something that was on my heart, was where we needed to gravitate. So that sort of turned into what we now call Cross the Divide.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, if I could just share what happened to me after chaplain candidate school, I went back to seminary, and I was ordained in 1996 as a priest for Philadelphia. But when I had asked my bishop, Archbishop Bevilacqua, if I could be a chaplain candidate, he said, I know all about that program. I'll let you be a chaplain candidate, but I'm not going to give you any guarantees that I'll let you go on active duty. And for us, and for all of us, really, our endorser has to endorse us for service in the military. And for Catholics, it's the local bishop has to give you that permission. So I said, okay. So I got ordained, and I spent 5 years in ministry at a parish in Philadelphia. Just loved being a parish priest. And I stayed in the reserve. So I did 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year as a reservist. But in the back of my mind, I really wanted to go active duty. So after 5 years of ministry, I wrote my letter to the bishop, who's now a cardinal. And I said, Cardinal Bevilacqua, I've been waiting 9 years to write this letter. So I really would love to go on active duty with your permission. Even though I love being a parish priest, I think I'd also like to be serving on active duty as a Navy chaplain. So I wrote my letter in January, didn't hear a thing for 3 months. And then I said, Lord, I love being a priest. The bishop might say no. He might say, I need you in Philadelphia. You can't go active duty. Whatever you want, Lord, I'm okay with. And I felt this tremendous sense of peace. Well, the next day, the letter came from the bishop saying I could go on active duty as a Navy chaplain. So I went off to Camp Johnson near Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And I'm out there training with the Navy chaplains, about to go on active duty with the Marines. I already know where my first assignment's going to be. I'm going to be with the Combat Assault Battalion, Okinawa, Japan, with the Marines. And we're coming out of the gas mask drill. Remember how much fun that was? Well, for those who don't know, it's really horrible. You know, you're in this room full of gas. You got to wear the mask. Take the mask off, you know, with your eyes closed. Put the mask back on. Clear the mask. Start breathing again. Well, even if you do it correctly, your eyes are burning. It's pretty miserable.
Yeah.
Well, that's the condition we were in when they came running out of the classroom, just screaming at us at the top of their lungs, get in the classroom now. And it wasn't normal screaming. We thought, okay, we're in trouble. Something happened. We go into the classroom, and on the TV was 9/11. So that's exactly where I was, with a room full of brand new Navy chaplains going to go on active duty with the Marines. And we're watching the World Trade Center come down.
Wow.
And I will never forget what I was feeling. Sick to my stomach, knowing that people were dying, and real fear, knowing that I'm going on active duty with the Marines and I could die. Because you and I both know that chaplains have died, even though under the Geneva Convention, we are non-combatants, so we don't even carry weapons, but we have a bodyguard with us. But sometimes things happen like that. So anyway, that's how I started active duty. And then I went off to Okinawa for the year and just loved my time with the Marines, and just everything they did, I did. When the food was cold, who cares? Often you eat last, and you just, whatever you can do to try to motivate your Marines. That's what we try to do. And of course, you have field services where different faiths would come together. We pray together, have mass. It was really quite wonderful. Yeah. And I did a couple carrier tours to George Washington and Norfolk. I went to Yokosuka, Japan. I was on the Reagan for a year. Did 3 years of recruiting out of St. Louis. Coast Guard boot camp, San Diego. I mean, Coast Guard in Cape May. San Diego was the Marine Corps boot camp. And I just had a wonderful career. And then I got the call to be an auxiliary bishop of the Military Archdiocese. So I'm still serving veterans, and you're serving veterans.
Yeah.
So isn't it great that not only to serve veterans, but to be a veteran?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's as you're talking, I'm picturing it. I'm like reliving it. And one of my favorite memories, I hadn't thought of this for a while, but did you ever serve with Father Bill Devine?
Oh yeah.
And he was in '06. It might have been his last tour.
You remember the case study they talked about in chaplain school about him handing out the water bottles?
The case study? No, I don't.
Well, when I was in chaplain school, he was a case study. All chaplains of all denominations learned about him. He was in Iraq during the war, and it was a very, very tense, volatile situation. It was like 110 degrees. Everyone's sweating. Everyone's hot. A lot of tension in the air. Father Devine goes up to the CO and says, "Sir, I think if you have the Marines just start handing out water bottles to the crowd, that might ease the temperature a bit." Literally. Right. And that's what he did, and things calmed down. So they taught us that in chaplain school, how you sometimes advise the command, and things you think might be helpful.
Well, what a wise suggestion or advisement, because water is life. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
But I remember him coming. He was the most senior chaplain in the area as an older 06. And I invited him to come out with me as I was making rounds to visit our Marines with the MEU, and he, as you know, again, not to put him down at all, because he might be, you know, if he were to hear this, he might be like, well, you know, I was in pretty good shape. You know, I'm not sure what the problem is here, but in my mind, as a younger guy at the time, I was in my mid 40s. I was like, wow, I don't want this guy to have a heart attack while we're walking. It's like over 100 degrees. Blah, blah, blah. But he went around and visited. I think he touched the lives of every single Marine. You know, I'm just envisioning him walking around, and he was tireless. He was relentless. And it goes back to what you're saying earlier, you know, when you're focused on others, when you're focused on serving people and being the hands and feet of Jesus, it's amazing, I think, what you can accomplish. But in any case, so Yeah, just listening to you, that's amazing. And those, some of those feelings as you go back, 25 years, it probably seems like yesterday, I'm sure, for you.
Yeah, I remember all the fun stuff. I don't miss too many things. The things that I don't miss at all are those fitness reports.
Yeah.
I just didn't like doing them,
Yeah,
but it was a necessary evil, I guess. But
right,
anyway,
right.
well, I don't want to talk about them. Tell me more about how you transitioned from active duty to what was the next step before crossing the divide?
Cross the divide,
What
yeah.
happened from the time you retired to crossing the divide?
Really not a whole lot happened. It was pretty quick. So before I retired, I had been talking with a gal who has property down in, so we're in Western Washington. She was down in Eastern Oregon, and she was running out of her camp called Divide Camp at the time. She was running just periodic events for veterans. And sometimes it was just having a veteran come out and hang out at the camp or go hunting. With one of our Marines who lives in that area, Andy Markham. He's still with our organization, Cross the Divide. Fantastic guy, fantastic family, the Markhams. But she would take care of folks, and her focus at the time was post 9/11 combat wounded veterans. And so a buddy of mine who's a retired Navy SEAL ended up moving kind of that area. One day he calls me up. He's like, Mo, you and I have been talking about you doing something like this when you retire. I think I've got, I got to put you in touch with this gal. And so she and I talked. The intent was sort of to take that nonprofit and over. And really, to make a long story short, my vision was to do something much broader and not just focus in a single area. We didn't have a whole lot of money to work with that first year, but we had one grant and it was for backpacking. And
Mm.
so that's how we started. We were able to leverage that to do several backpacking trips that were really focused, ended up being focused in the Olympic National Forest, Olympic National Park, and a llama packing trip. So llamas, pack your gear, so it's a little bit easier for people who may not have the ability or just like being around animals. Honestly, like
Yeah.
most people just love being around horses or llamas. We have horse camps now too. But so that those discussions were happening while I was still on active duty. So as soon as I retired, I did two things. So I retired on September 1st of 2021. We're having this conversation in June of 2025. So a little less than 4 years ago, as soon as I retired, I said, you know what? If I'm going to do this, my retirement, thank the Lord, I've got this retirement that a lot of people don't have the opportunity to take advantage of. So I'm thankful for it. But at the same time, it doesn't. There's a financial delta. It's not going to meet all of our needs to take care of the family. So I started my own business. So I do coaching, executive coaching, and training mostly for government and military, but also for corporate and nonprofits.
Great.
And that helps kind of meet the gap. And then with Cross the Divide, I said, okay, now that I've got the business going, which launched really fast. I was actually surprised. They say usually plan on about 3 years to kind of get your cash flow at a sustainable rate. For me, it happened pretty quick,
Mm.
um, by God's grace. And then so I stepped in. I did what I would never. By the way, if you are listening and you're on active duty and you're thinking about transitioning, I would recommend not doing what I did. It was for me. It was just God lined these things up, and I felt like I had to step into them, but launched the business and stepped into Cross the Divide. So we reincorporated what was called Divide Camp, this one
Now,
place.
is that with Teresa?
No, so yeah, thank you for asking. So Teresa, I actually met fairly recently.
Okay.
So So Cross the Divide launched as a new reincorporated entity January 1st of 2022. And the way that it shifted was we went from this one, place in Eastern Oregon to what within a year became 10 different states. We've now had events in 14 different states. Instead of just post 9/11 combat wounded veterans, we serve all veterans and their families, because we feel like involving families is critical to the continued growth of a veteran, their healing, and the hope that comes from involving the family and getting the family together is just critical to us. So there's been some changes there. We also have an all veteran board, so that's helpful. I think it's important. But in any case, so really you have to fast forward over 3 years, and before I meet Teresa. So we had been talking since year one about doing a marriage retreat for the SEALs, because a couple of guys on our board, Navy SEALs, our first board president, Dave Piddleco, is a Navy SEAL, and he went out to Virginia, and he puts me in touch with the Navy SEAL Foundation, Angelina Brockett, and we're having this conversation. Sorry, not Brockett. We're having this conversation that has to do with taking care of our SEAL veterans and how we could partner with the Navy SEAL Foundation, because they've got this network. And I said, we do backpacking and hunting, but she's like, honestly, we've got a ton of that. What we really need is help with our marriages. Do you do stuff for marriages? And Joe, anytime somebody looks at me and they're like, do you or can you do this, because this is what we need? My gut reaction is just to instantly say yes. Like, even if we don't, it's like, how do we get to that point?
Right. Figure it out. Right.
Yeah, let's figure it out. And it's a long story, but the short of it is we weren't able to support that. We had plans that kind of fell through for just different reasons for a couple of years, and then partnered. So Robert Bradshaw, Navy chaplain, did a lot of his time with SEALs. He was with the SEALs during Extortion 17 when SEAL Team 6 was shot down in Afghanistan. He's a beloved member of the SEAL community, SEAL and SWIC communities. We got linked up, and I don't know if you ever worked with Robert. He and I never worked together, but
I remember his name, but I never met him.
Okay. So he starts having conversations with people he knows in the SEAL community. One of those is Teresa Schick. So Teresa Schick is a spouse of a SEAL, or retired SEAL. And she started an organization called the Pillar Foundation. And if you've listened to this program or some other programs on WCAT radio, you know that you've heard from Teresa. Wonderful person, very passionate about reaching out to SEAL spouses who have just a tremendous mission and burden from having to support their spouse and their family over years of just some real intense, I think, pressure on our special operators and that community. In any case, Robert reaches out to Teresa. Teresa went on one of these radio programs and shared about this marriage retreat that we're wanting to do, and together, like partnering with the Navy SEAL Foundation and Cross the Divide, running it through Robert and all this, and there was actually a retired Navy chaplain who's a priest in New England who heard that program and said, and I don't know if he wants his name to be used, so I won't share it, but not out of disrespect, just to try to honor a possible desire to just remain anonymous, right? But he gave a very generous donation, said, I want to pay for their travel. So we had a site in Idaho, Protectors Peak, that offered their retreat site free of cost. We had a donor who said, I want to pay for all the travel. And we had a facilitator who said, I love this community. Me and my wife would love to step in and lead this event.
Wow.
All of a sudden, it was just green lights all the way across. It was in my timing, we would have done it 3 years ago. In God's timing, we did it last week. And
wow.
So because of my connection with Robert, I was introduced to Teresa with the Pillar Foundation, and just a wonderful gal. And in God's economy, I just needed to to be persistent, but let him do things in his time.
Great. And then from there, you actually started Cross the Divide as an official entity.
Yeah, so Cross the Divide started. So we had, when I met Teresa, we had been around for a few years. Cross the Divide started as an entity in January 1st of 2022.
Okay.
So we've been doing all those things: the hunting trips, the fishing trips, horse camping, llama packing, the women's ministry, which, by the way, if I could just, we talked a little bit about the marriage retreats. We've seen beautiful growth in our women's ministry. We just hosted a retreat in Colorado this past weekend, which was kind of, from a guy who likes to plan things about a year out, it felt a little last minute, but the ladies were amazing and they pulled it off, and the feedback has been unsurprisingly fantastic. But these retreats create space for women to breathe, to connect, to heal. And if anybody listening to this program has a heart for that, I'd really ask for your prayers and your support, because this is a little bit newer mission in the scheme of things with Cross the Divide, and it's not yet as well funded as some of our other programs, like our hunting programs, retreats and whatnot. But it's very powerful. And any case, so yeah, we've been at it for, this is our 4th year, which is, man, again, time just flies.
So this is your full-time job now, Mo? You're the executive director of it?
Yes, and I also have my business, but I put way more time into this than the business. Just like I say, kind of, I have to say no to a lot of things with the business, which is a good problem to have.
So do you have some paid employees and volunteers who help with these different programs?
We do. So I try as best as I can to make sure that people who are investing a lot of time into this, are, at least the offer is made to reimburse them to some degree. And so our guides, our facilitators, some of them were able to give sort of a contracted payment or honorarium, but others do it for free.
Mostly veterans who are your guides?
Mostly, but not strictly. We do have a couple of guys who have done. We have a Adam Corman out in Pennsylvania who does, in fact, fly. If you enjoy fly fishing or even want to give it a shot, I would genuinely love to connect you with Adam. He just does a fantastic job, and he's not a veteran, but he just steps into it like a chaplain would, quite honestly, and comes alongside of these people and teaches them not only how to fly fish or take some fly fishing, but just becomes this very natural conversation with them about life. And then we've got another guide facilitator in North Dakota, Mike Kramer, who, again, not a veteran, but I actually went on an event with a handful of veterans just to kind of be a participant and also observer. And he did remarkable. You would never know that this guy was not necessarily in his element, so to speak. Just did an amazing job. But we've got Corey Watson in Tennessee, who's a veteran, Andy Markham, both of those guys, Marines. Andy Markham is in Oregon. I mentioned him already. Terry Bewley, who's a reserve chaplain who runs a yearly trout fishing retreat for us in Arkansas. Endel Lee, who you may know, who was a admiral with the Chaplain Corps.
Oh, Endel.
Yeah.
Yeah, Endel became the admiral. That's right. And in the reserve, our admiral friend.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a tremendous chaplain. He's involved with you guys?
He is our current board president.
Oh, give him my best.
I will. And he runs a yearly Memorial Day flag relay in Alabama, which we're hoping to make a national Memorial Day flag relay next year from Arlington National Cemetery all the way across the country to Rosecrans National Cemetery in San Diego.
Wow.
We'll have all of these legs that are simultaneously being run. So essentially, in the course of a morning, we will have run a flag across every leg from coast to coast. And Endel is the one that runs herd on all that. I just do what I can to support him and make it happen.
Yeah, I would imagine you would need lots of subject matter experts, whether it's hunting or fishing or people that know how to do these things. You don't want a bunch of amateurs out there saying, well, now what's this? Which end of the gun do you use?
Yes, sir. No, it's important.
A lot of safety is involved, I'm sure.
And yet there's a lot of learning for us along the way, because most of us, whether we're chaplains or Marines or soldiers, or, we've got a parajumper, Air Force retired.
DJ?
I don't know what all those things are on a Air Force,
Is he a pararescue jumper, a
sergeant
PJ?
sleeve. What's that?
He's a PJ?
Yeah, he's a retired PJ. So
Oh,
we've
those
got folks
guys.
from all different walks of life doing this stuff, and
Those guys are amazing. Their level of training is incredible.
oh, absolutely.
All our special forces guys aren't in the SEALs, the Rangers, the PJs, the recon guys. I just like being next to them and like at camp. Just some of their studness would rub off on me, maybe, but
I know,
they're
right?
Incredible.
I know.
So they'd be fun to go on trips with.
And it's not just the so the people that we have serving, whether they're paid, volunteer, board members, whatever, are amazing. But it's also the participants that show up, and that's why we do it at the end of the day, right? But they're amazing. Some of them are people I knew when I was on active duty. Some of them, most of them aren't, obviously. But we had one guy who, and he's on our website, so I think I can use his name, Gabe Guest. He retired as a master sergeant, but when he was a staff sergeant with 2-7, he was in a deployment in Afghanistan in 2008. Hit an IED, ended up didn't lose his leg in that moment. It did, his leg did some funky things. And to be honest with you, it's amazing that with the doctors that we have in Navy medicine, that they were able to do what they could. They tried to save the leg, they couldn't. So he came out in, I believe it was 2023, on what we call our Ty Woods Memorial Hunt. Might have been 22. Anyway, so Ty Woods, Navy SEAL, who died in Benghazi on September 11th. If you've never seen the movie 13 Hours, I encourage you to watch it. It is a remarkably accurate retelling, from what I understand from folks who were there. A pretty accurate retelling of what happened to those contractors who were there protecting a bunch of our nation's diplomats and whatnot in that compound when they were attacked in Benghazi. And it's a sad story, but it's a powerful story at the same time. It's a remarkable story of honor and courage. But Ty Woods died in that. So for those of you who haven't seen the movie yet, it's a bit of a spoiler alert. But he died in that firefight. And his father, Charles Woods, approached me shortly after we started Cross the Divide and said, "Could we make this a yearly event, a memorial to honor my son and all war fighters?" And so we did that. We made it a yearly hunt, elk hunt. So Gabe Guest, Master Sergeant Gabe Guest, became one of our Ty Woods Memorial Hunt participants. He came out, and honestly, it was not easy for him. Here's this I would call him an alpha infantry Marine who's used to being a leader of Marines, who's going up and down these hills that are covered in badger holes and lava rock and everything, with this fairly new prosthetic that wasn't working great for him at the time. And so you're tripping over things, you're stumbling, not because of your capability, just it's hard, and especially with a prosthetic, but very humbling. And then we would get out there, and things were happening that we just simply could not control. At one point, these cowboy, where he's on a herd of elk, he's waiting for them to come in to take a shot, and these cowboys come in looking for a cow or something, or trying to find something that they lost, and they bust the herd out of there. And then another point, we get them somewhere else. There's this herd of elk screaming across this big open rolling piece of land, and we're like, "Oh, get out! You gotta get up on this little outcropping. It's covered in these sharp rocks." And so he's like getting up there, probably cutting himself up. He sets up, And as he's getting ready to try to take a shot, somebody else from a kilometer away starts lobbing these ridiculous shots in. So not one of our people, somebody else,
Mm,
and just blows the herd out of it. And not only was it
mm,
not ethical, but just ruins his. All these things are happening day after day,
yeah,
right? It gets exhausting. Mentally, it starts getting tiring. And he starts, by day 3, he's reliving a lot of the things in his life
yeah.
that were out of his control and frustrating and challenging. And you could see how it's starting to wear on him. And the neat thing was that day, day 3, it was a really hot day. And I thought to myself, they're going to be done. Like we're going to come back, because we always spend evenings together. We pray together, we talk together, which is where the real power of these things is. And we're sitting there, and I'm thinking he's done. He's going to go home. And he looks at us, and he's as calm as day. And he just says, I think I know why we haven't been able to get an elk. We're
Mm,
like, okay, do tell. He says, if we had gotten one on day 1, like we all expected, it would have been great. Would have had meat for my family, gone home, taken the drive from Oregon down to Texas, which is a really long drive, would have been great. He's like, but instead we didn't. And now I've had 3 days of spending time sharing our hearts, our stories,
wow.
hearing Charles talk about his son Ty and his experience as a SEAL. He's like, and he goes, I prayed out loud, because every time we'd go out there, Charles or Andy would say, "Hey, before we start this day, let's pray." And Charles would
Mm,
invite our guest hunter to pray. So Gabe was like, "I've never prayed out loud before, and I did today, or I did this week.
wow.
This is great." We get up. The neat thing was we got up the next morning, which was his last morning hunting before he went back home. And for those who aren't hunters, this may not crank their gears, but it was just beautiful. We got out there, and before sunrise, we're at the bottom of this hill. We're wanting to hunt, and this herd comes up, and these 2 beautiful bulls, elk, male elk with these big, racks and all. They're bugling, and if you've never been close to a bull elk when it's bugling, it just literally goes through you. It's just amazing. It's beautiful. And then he was able to harvest one, and
Mm,
it just kind of helped for him to go through that physically and psychologically,
yeah.
emotionally, to overcome 3 days of difficulty and then harvest one on the last morning he was out there. It just really, I think it was pretty powerful for him.
Yeah, that brings up, you were talking to me earlier about resilience. I guess that's
Mhm.
one of the things you focus on with your these workshops. What are it's
Yeah.
resilience. What are some of the others?
Well, I think resilience is kind of the key, and within that focus, if we're kind of targeting resilience downrange, up close, we're looking at a handful of things to line us up in such a way that we feel like, or we can say with confidence that we're addressing resilience, we're building resilience. And so we look at uh, we try to gauge if we're building confidence, if we're building connection, if we're building trust, if morale is improving, if a sense of hope is improving through the course of all these events. Again, whether it's a marriage event, a women's retreat, a fly fishing retreat, or one of these hunts. Uh, and so we ask questions, to try to gauge that before they arrive and then after the event is over. And each of these markers, we believe, has a very specific correlation to resilience. And so there's reasons why we measure those things.
Okay, and you also are you able to somehow measure the effectiveness of some of these retreats? Is there
Yeah,
some kind of in the Navy? We always had metrics talking about measuring things. Are you able to do that a little bit?
yeah, good point. Stories are always great. Even we think about the Gospels, and one of the greatest testimonies to the power of Christ is a blind man who just, they're like, what happened? He's like, well, all I can tell you is I was blind and now I see. Well, that's pretty powerful.
Mm,
And we've got a lot of stories, and I could talk your ear off all day about the stories, but metrics are important, especially when we're talking about folks who are looking at supporting an organization. They kind of want to know what makes you different. And so just using those five sort of metrics as a way to gauge the impact of Cross the Divide events on the folks who participate. Confidence, I mentioned confidence, connection, trust, morale, and hope. Confidence, we believe that really empowers veterans to face challenges, to adapt to change, and to regain that sense of control that they feel like they've lost, often due to combat stress and those kind of things. And when so throughout last year, when we compared pre-event to post-event numbers, we saw a 43% increase in confidence. So that's pretty significant. And no decrease at all, only an increase. With connection, which we believe connection helps us address feelings of isolation. It reinforces belonging, provides sort of emotional, practical support. We saw an increase of over 62%, which is pretty significant. With trust, which I believe is essential to giving that foundation of emotional security and support as well, we saw an increase of over 58%. And then with morale and hope, which help them understand how they can now help other people, and it gives them this optimistic outlook for the future, which again, both are critical, because you can't stay in your own head the whole time. Being able to see how you can help others and also see how your life can look different, both of those are important. So with morale and hope, we saw an increase in both of those of about 50% between.
That's fantastic. 50%. And I understand you sure it has some wounded veterans, people with lost limbs and whatnot, participate in these events.
We have, Gabe, who I mentioned earlier, was an amputee. We had a triple amputee come out, who's a soldier who lost both of his legs and arm, and he came out. There's a video of that on our website, on our YouTube page, and you can see Jose at one point carried on the back of one of his buddies over the hills into his hunting position, and
that's gotta be powerful.
Yeah, amazing. And it takes a lot of humility on the veteran's part too, to allow himself to, and that's part of the healing, is realizing I need help, but I can do things I never did with all four limbs if I'm willing to get the help, or take the help. And
they can help others do things that they can do well.
Yeah, absolutely. And both of these guys I just mentioned, Gabe and Jose, are perfect examples of that, how invested they are in helping other veterans, whether it's coming alongside of them and having conversations, or, being part of, like Jose ended up being on the Paralympic surfing team. Like, you might wonder, like, how does that work? And it's an amazing story. Gabe is very, very invested in veteran organizations down in the San Antonio area, but absolutely. Yeah, we see it over and over again.
Are there a lot of testimonials on your website from participants that have gone on these events?
There are some. I would say the best, if you really want to get a kind of a snapshot, the best testimonials are the ones from them themselves on our videos on our YouTube page. And most of them are from the first few years. Again, being a nonprofit, one of the challenges is finding somebody who can put videos together at a cost that works for a nonprofit, which sometimes means free, and have the time to do that, because everybody's hustling and trying to they've got their own priorities. So we've got a lot more we could share, but I think there's so much already on our YouTube page. You could probably spend hours watching some of the videos of backpacking trips and hunts and whatnot, and hearing their stories.
Mo, what's the best way for people to find out more about Cross the Divide? Go to your website and then the YouTube channel.
Yeah, so I would say the best way is just to go to our website, which is crossthedivide.us. Crossthedivide.us. From there, if you go to the bottom, there are social media links. So from there, you can link to our Facebook page, our YouTube page. That would be the easiest way to do it. And of course, If you subscribe through the website, if you send us if you contact us and let us know you want to subscribe to the newsletter, those kind of things, we can keep you updated. And certainly, if you go to the Facebook page and do the same, you'll get updates. We do not blitz anybody with daily emails or asks or that kind of a thing. So just know that if you want to follow us and get updates, you can do that without feeling like we're trying to sell you a used car or something.
No, but funding is important. Do you have some corporations that can help you, or is it mostly private donations that help you?
Yeah, great question. It's a pretty good, I'd say it's a good blend of both. We have a lot of individual donors, and we also have foundations. We have churches or parachurch organizations, religious organizations that donate. So it's a pretty good mix. But if you're listening, whether you are a foundation, an organization, a church or denomination or whatever it might be, a missions organization, or you're just an individual and you're like, hey, this sounds like something I would want to enable. I can't do what you do, but I can support it and be part of it that way, because without that support, we aren't able to do this, right? So I would say, just if you could go to crossthedivide.us, there is a donate button in the upper right part of that browser window, and that will take you to a place where you can either you can get the address to send in a check, or you can donate online. And there's also a drop-down menu. You don't have to use it, but if there's a specific program you want to donate to, so for example, when I was talking about women's ministry, if that really pinged your heart, you can go in there and select your donation goes there, or marriage, or horse camping, or or a particular individual's regional program. You can select those things. So thank you for asking.
And people who want to participate, go to the website also and find out how to participate with various things.
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to our events calendar and you can kind of see what's coming up. You can also just go to there's a contact link on the website. You can just go there and just, say, hey, this is where I live. Here's some of the events that I would be interested in. We'd love to, reach back out to you as we're able to see if we can link you up with an event.
And then people can pay if they're able to, or not, if they're not able to pay.
Oh, great question. Yeah. So our goal is to provide these events free of charge. Now, we can't always do that. I will say this, at a minimum, the event itself is free of charge. What we may not be able to fund, depending, is like the travel. For example, sometimes we ask participants to fund part or all of their travel to get to the location.
And some veterans have done very well. They can pay it forward and help another veteran, right?
Absolutely. And we have some that will do that. Absolutely. They come to an event. In fact, some of our most faithful, consistent supporters are folks who came on an event and had such a powerful experience that they're now monthly givers.
Wow. So it's crossthedivide.us.
Yes, sir.
Well, Mo, when we're done with this, I'm going to go to the website. I'm going to send you a donation.
Well, Bishop Coffey, you are too kind. I really appreciate that.
Mo, I do want to say, in all seriousness, I'm incredibly proud of you for using the gifts God gave you, which are many. You had a wonderful career in the Navy, and now you're helping a lot of veterans. So God bless you for that. And Mo, if you don't mind, can you just maybe offer up a prayer for the veterans and your work?
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you for that invitation. Our Father God, we come to you today with hearts full of gratitude, first of all, for what you have done for us. You yourself did not count your royalty, your transcendent nature as God, something to be held on to, but you took on human flesh and you came and you lived our life and you died our death for us. And we want to thank you for that. And as we seek to serve others, and specifically as Bishop Coffey and I right now think of veterans and their family members, help us to know how to do that in a way that impacts their lives now, today, and for your kingdom. Help us to step in and be those hands and feet, those ears, and when the timing is right, the mouth of Jesus to speak words of life and truth and health. And Lord, we want to lift up all those who are veterans of serving our country, war fighters, their families. They've sacrificed a lot, but both the seen and unseen wounds of war stay with us. So Lord, we ask for you to intervene and to bring healing and hope to their lives. And I even want to think of those now who are still in uniform, who are deployed, standing the watch tonight, or even I think today as my old battalion 2-7 is being sent to LA. Lord, just watch over these young men and women, keep them safe, and draw them to yourself. And as it pleases you, continue to use us in that process of reaching out to others and caring for them. And I want to lift up Bishop Coffey to you too, Lord. Such a dear friend and wonderful human being who has cared for people for decades tirelessly because his heart is right and his vision is on you. Continue to, Lord, I just lift him up to you and ask you to continue to empower him for the work of your ministry, to care for others, to reflect Jesus, and keep him safe when he's out there on his paddleboard off the coast of the Atlantic. So thank you so much for this time together. And we lift these things to you, Father, in the name of Jesus, through the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Mo, thank you very much. And I'm going to be praying for you and your work. And I'm just so thrilled that I was able to have this wonderful conversation with you and talk
Likewise.
All right.
Likewise. Oh, this fed my soul today, Joe. Thank you so much.
And give a hug to Rhonda for me.
I will. Yeah,
right.
Rhonda and Gabby are both here today. Gabby just graduated high school over the weekend. So
congratulations.
Thank you so much, Joe.
All right. Take care, my friend. Semper Fi.